about scaling back in with Azure, specifically about Azure in general, and this is a very bit kind of introductory session on what is Azure, what can you do with it, and kind of some of the developer platform side of things. So I'm assuming, if I turn my pointer on, that this will work, that everybody here has done something on the cloud. The biggest thing is who here does not use internet mail. Everybody uses internet mail, so Hotmail, Gmail. Anybody here still using Yahoo? Nobody. Okay.
Ask to leave.
Ask to leave. It's a great place to store all your spam. Have a Yahoo account just for spam. That's great. So it really is about kind of moving all of our compute into a more scalable kind of elastic fashion. I'm assuming you guys have heard of the term elastic before. It means to kind of scale outwards as well as upwards with regards to your infrastructure based on demand. So if you get more users in, you can kind of automatically scale outwards. But when it comes to cloud computing, there's really three pillars that a lot of people aren't really aware of. And there's the first pillar, which is infrastructure as a service. You have then platform as a service and then software as a service. The one that most people and most consumers are familiar with is platform as a service. So something such as Facebook, Hotmail, any of those kinds of things where you kind of sign up, that's platform as a service cloud computing. Then you've got that's software as a service cloud computing. Then you have platform as a service where we provide a platform for developers to create these kind of solutions which they make available to the public. What you only worry about there as the developer is pretty much everything above the operating system. You don't worry about the operating system, you don't worry about hardware, and all that stuff, you just worry about the code that you're writing and hosting. Then the last one is infrastructure as a service, where you will run your operating systems on our hardware, so all you worry about is operating system and up, and everything below we worry about. So that's the big kind of three pillars in Azure. And most people, like I said, most people look at software as a service, but developers are starting to now look at kind of how to kind of build elegant kind of scalable solutions quickly using platform as a service. And in legacy situations, the infrastructure as a service offering gives you the ability to take, say, a Linux machine, sysprep it, and actually upload that onto the cloud and run it in the cloud. And if you want to, you can actually go and automatically scale upwards those machines, so you can give it more CPUs, more RAM, and it won't actually affect your operation of that operating system. It will just automatically get that kind of function ready. So Windows Azure provides us with a really comprehensive set of features and kind of frameworks to allow us to build flexible systems that are kind of open. You can use PHP on Azure, which I think a lot of people are quite surprised with. You can run Linux on Azure. I can spin up an Ubuntu box in about 5 to 10 minutes from scratch. And it's also built on a solid platform. And when I say solid, yes, it does sound kind of airy-fairy, but we run Bing, we run Hotmail, we run Office 365, and all of our large public services on Azure. So if you're using Office 365, that's running on our Azure platform. So it really is a tried and tested kind of execution. So we have a very large footprint across the world. There we go. We have data centers in North America, South America, a lot in Europe, some in Asia and Australia. We currently don't have any data centers in South Africa. I know I usually get the question why. The main reason why is just cost at this point in time, because we don't just put down one data center at a time. We drop down two because they run in redundancy. We also then have to ensure that the link between those two data centers actually can replicate across to other geographical locations, specifically because of some features that we provide. One of the main benefits of Azure is you only pay for what you use. We have a very granular kind of costing model for a lot of the features, and the other great thing is we have a ton of free stuff so that a developer can actually sign up for Azure. And so unfortunately you do have to provide a credit card. So in order to get onto Azure, you have to have a credit card. Sign up, there's free websites, there's free mobile services stuff. You only start paying when you start using things like storage, large compute facilities and so on. So,
sorry, can I interrupt?
Yeah, anytime.
You see, you don't have data centers here because of cost.
It's just because of dropping down two large data warehouses in South Africa. It's extremely expensive for us at this point in time. What we're busy investigating is bringing a data center here, so we've got access to the whole of Africa. I don't have any view of when or how that's going to happen. But we're also just investigating getting a content delivery network here as well, so a CDN, so we can cache data across the times and things between going to the States and stuff like that. Most people who are using Azure today are actually leveraging Northern Europe, and there's a couple of caveats with that. Is based on what services you're using around the world. So if you host in Northern Europe, for example, I've seen the instance where some people will host their front end in Northern Europe and their storage in the States. It doesn't make sense because you get like increased latency between your transactions. So ideally you want to host everything in one locale. But like I said, unfortunately we don't have it in South Africa at this point in time. You can use Azure in South Africa and do all the billing and so on. But we are looking at bringing a data warehouse in South Africa as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I've got no view on when that will happen. I think we have been working with Dynata on that as well. One of the things going forward is that while Azure is this big data warehouse solution, you will also be able to host Azure like locally on premise. So the whole Azure premise of being able to scale out and scale up your hardware very, very quickly and easily by rolling in another rack, just adding something to your domain, that will be coming quite soon, which is really, really nice. So there's the kind of three key components of Azure. You've got the virtual machines, which are infrastructure as a service, you've got cloud services, and then websites. So the virtual machines allows me to take a Hyper-V virtual machine, upload that into the cloud, and I can then spin that up. We also have these things called galleries, which I'll be actually showing you guys all this stuff. Is where I can spin up a virtual machine just from a template that exists on the cloud. So I don't actually have to upload anything, and then I can kind of spin stuff up based on these kind of existing like hardware templates. From a cloud services point of view, we have a whole bunch of application blocks, and then we also allow you to host your websites online. I mean, the hosting websites online, people have been doing for years. It's nothing new, but the benefit of hosting in the cloud specifically is that you can scale them up based on demand. If, say, for example, you're running a PR campaign or something like that, which is short term, throw it onto Azure, spin up some server space, and once your campaign's done, you can just kill it. And all you do is you pay for the time and the utilization over that period, nothing more. So there's a bunch of application blocks that help developers create really, really like elegant and flexible kind of Azure solutions. So this is the platform as a service offering. So we support big data. So we have Hadoop support built into Azure, allowing you to do large data analysis and large quantity. But what we're talking here is not terabytes, we're talking petabytes and bigger. We also have standard SQL databasing. You can also run MySQL on Azure. Unfortunately, those are the only two relational databases that we support, is SQL Server and MySQL. From a storage point of view, we also realized that not everything needs to be SQL data or relational. We do have a big NoSQL drive as well, so you could have table-based structures. You have also got standard kind of file-based flat file structures that you can store and people can then access. We also have traffic kind of routing and management components which allow you to kind of scale your applications a bit easier, also be able to reroute accordingly. Caching block is actually very important because if you do have various sources of data, you can actually cache in memory on Azure large chunks of data that you want to be able to handle and manipulate quickly. We also provide a messaging bus on Azure, so who here has used something like TIBCO or like BizTalk? Nobody. Okay. So if you're doing things like enterprise bus kind of work and SOA, service-oriented architecture, we actually do tie into that quite closely with our service bus implementation. We also have a very, very rich kind of identity component. For those of you who didn't know, pretty much 90% of the top 500 companies will use Active Directory as their identity federation mechanism. Now we have a way of actually doing identity various ways. Firstly, you can have federated trust to your own Active Directory kind of implementation. So you can actually authenticate using your domain credentials. You can also authenticate using things like Facebook, Gmail, Hotmail, or Windows Live in your Windows account. into your applications, and we provide easy ways of you integrating with that. We also have a very rich media streaming framework, which is Azure Media Services. What this allows you to do is you can actually dump a media file into a file share on your local server. That will then get pulled into Azure. It will then transcode and actually reformat that video for whatever kind of support devices you're looking to support. So if you want to support iPad, Android devices, S40s, based on the codecs that they support, you can actually transcode to various of those formats and actually make it available online. We do have CDNs in other places around the world, unfortunately not in South Africa, but except we're working on getting one locally. And then lastly, there's quite a bit of networking support around how you can structure your networks. You can set up virtual private networks in the cloud very, very quickly. Okay, so the first thing is virtual machines. We provide a very flexible, open way of kind of hosting virtual machines. We support Windows Server and Linux. I have also run DOS 3.11 on the cloud, although it does take a bit of hacking to get working, but it does work. And it's really also allowing you to kind of have flexible workload. So instead of a company hosting stuff locally on hardware you have here, you can upload a virtual machine. And if you find that you're requiring a bit more CPU or a bit more memory, you just drag a slider and you get access to that. Obviously that increases the cost of the hosting, but yeah, it does mean that you don't have to go out and have physical rooms to actually store stuff anymore. It does reduce your costs on maintaining hardware and so on. We also allow you to build your own virtual private networks so that you're completely isolated from everything. And you can also allocate that you want dedicated servers to yourself very, very easily just by the way that you drag the slider. We provide a bunch of website options. So you can build ASP.NET websites, you can build Node.js or PHP. So like I said, we're actually quite open to other platforms hosting on Azure. And you can also deploy these sites very quickly using the standard FTP, which happened a while ago. Git, for those of you using GitHub or Git for your source control, and then TFS, which is our baby, which I am much in love with. And the other nice thing is you can start for free. So if you sign up for Azure, it could be a credit card, but you can automatically get access to free websites. You can create, I think, up to 10 free websites. And there's a bunch of templates which I'll also show you. And then if your traffic grows...
Do you guys support JSP and Java websites?
No. Unfortunately, no JSP. It's just ASP.NET, Node.js, and PHP. Yeah. I think the reasoning for that is because the way the Azure infrastructure works is that it's all based on IIS, and there is no add-on to IIS to host PHP and MySQL and those kinds of things. Whereas writing a Java website, JWS website, something like Apache or Tomcat. So while I say out of this kind of websites thing, you wouldn't be able to do it, there's nothing stopping you spinning up a Linux machine and running a JSP website there. At all. That will work perfectly.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, for the database people, we do obviously support relational SQL structures with SQL Server as well as MySQL. We also have clustering, which based on the option that you select, we also have high availability. So our SLA can be, I think it's 99.97% uptime, something like that. And you can also have either a fully managed SQL Server service, so we'll actually manage the whole thing for you, or you can actually manage it yourself through the standard enterprise controller or through Visual Studio 2012, 2013. And then obviously we have SQL reporting services available as well as analysis services and so on, so it's the whole suite. Obviously MySQL is a very lightweight version of SQL Server, but it comes at a much lower cost as well, so if that's what you're trying to go to. The other type of storage we support is blob storage. So this is actually a very, very nice feature from Azure where it allows you to store large files that are accessible across the web, but you can also have them kind of geo-replicated across the world to ensure that you've got that high availability. So what will happen is the minute you upload a file, it will start replicating off. So if you upload to Northern Europe, it will start replicating that to the States. So if Northern Europe does go down, what will happen is it will automatically reroute to the US and you'll have constant uptime there. You can have this blob storage without geolocation. It does mean it's cheaper, but yeah, those options are there. Next one is caching. This is, like I said, this is really to ensure that your applications that are running in Azure have access to data very, very quickly. It will actually grab that information, store it in memory as long as possible and as long as needed. And it just means that your applications can really, really access stuff quickly. Once again, it's also high availability support, those kinds of things, there's some replication that happens. From a density point of view, obviously we do integrate with your Active Directory. We can actually also set up a VPN between Azure and your local network to ensure that there's a secured connection between the two and trusted connection. We support single sign-on, so this is the kind of ability to sign in with Facebook and all that kind of stuff. We provide your applications then with a token once you've signed in, and that token is unique to that kind of credential. We also support the kind of graph REST API. And yeah, so it's like 93% of 14,000 companies use Active Directory, so it's a really, really strong story with regards to integration. From the service bus point of view, if you're talking to multiple disparate services, like you want to talk to SAP, you want to talk to another kind of proprietary financial system, and so on, if those applications are structured in a way that they can push messages into other systems, you can leverage our service bus from those systems to be able to pass messages between the various components of the solution. And you can do message routing and so on. Like I said, it really does help us build really nice hybrid applications where you have some stuff that's locally hosted on-premise, talking to cloud-based offerings. And I think that's probably one of the bigger differences between the Azure service and the comparative products, is that we do allow you to run like wherever you want. It's not everything has to move to Azure. You move what's needed. For example, there is a company that actually did one of our first Azure demos. What they did is they do a lot of their development in-house of their kind of 3D animation stuff, and then they ship off just the rendering time through to the cloud. And actually the demo that they did was they took Toy Story 1, and which took 6 months originally to render, and they rendered it real time using Azure Compute Services, which I thought was pretty impressive. There's a YouTube video out there on it somewhere. The other thing which is really great is that we have the ability to kind of consume something called the Windows Azure Store. Now, some items are available in South Africa, not all of them, but it's location specific. But you're able to go and consume services as well as kind of other kind of data from other providers around the world in a store-like fashion. So very much like your iTunes and your Google Play or your Windows 8 store, your Windows Phone store and so on. You can actually go and say, I actually want to subscribe to this. They then give you can then get access to their backend services to actually collect data or to do mapping and so on. But not only that, we can actually also provide data to that service and actually monetize through the Windows Azure Store. So if you have information which is valuable to other people, you're able to expose it through that service. Obviously, there are some legal things that you need to be aware of around your data. Does anybody here know about Poppy? Yeah. It's coming, if it's not already in. The Personal Information Act, which allows us only to ship certain information globally, whereas the rest has to stay inside of South Africa. That's actually a problem across the world now. Well, not a problem, it's a good thing. Where people have to be aware of it. It's a good thing, I promise. But yeah. So I'm actually going to jump into a demo now and just start showing you guys a bit about Windows Azure. I'm not going to code or anything like that. I'm just going to show you the different components and so on. Okay, now watch as the projector does its wonders. And I'll be pray that it comes back to life. And there we go. Up and running. Okay, I'm working on very limited screen real estate here. Okay, so what I've got here is I've opened the Windows Azure Management Console. This is your kind of your world when it comes to Azure. It's managed on windowsazure.com, and this gives you access to everything that you need. So what you can see here, I have two things running here. I have a storage account here, and then I have a Active Directory for some reason. I've spun up my own Active Directory for some reason. I'm actually going to go and wipe that at some point. But here you can see I have websites. I can go and create websites. I have virtual machines. I can go and create virtual machines. I have this thing called mobile services, which I'll go into a little bit more detail later. Cloud services. This is a bunch of other kind of services that you can connect to your SQL databases. You can actually go and create all of these things just via the web portal. From a storage point of view, media services, your service bus, this is where you can start creating your namespaces as to how you route things around and so on. SQL reporting, here's where you can go and create your new virtual networks and so on. You've got a traffic manager, Active Directory, which I have no idea why I created an Active Directory here. But I will definitely wipe that at some point. There's a whole bunch of other add-ons. These are the add-ons that you purchase from the store. So if you, for example, have a Bing add-on to get Bing and geographic information or reverse geocoding information, you can then pull that into your applications and your standard setting stuff. So one of the really nice things is if I want to go spin up a virtual machine, I just go new, virtual machine, from gallery. And then this is the gallery of all the virtual machines that are available to me. So as you can see, it starts off with, I can actually pull up SQL Server 2012 Data Center Edition. I can then go and create SharePoint Server, SQL 2014 Server, BizTalk Servers, Visual Studio 2013 Premium. If you guys haven't played with Visual Studio 2013, you can go spin up a virtual machine and go play with it on here. Just don't leave it running, because then you use up your free utilization very quickly. I had my whole thing shut down after about 4 days. But yeah, there you can see there's a Java Platform Standard Edition on Windows Server 2012. Oracle WebLogic servers, a whole bunch of Oracle stuff. So if you're running Oracle, you can now go host it directly in Azure just by spinning up a template. The Linux guys, OpenSUSE, who've got Ubuntu, and they all work beautifully. And the great thing is once these things are split up, you can obviously then either RDP into the boxes to actually connect them, or if you're using the Linux machines, VNC and so on. Okay. So if I wanted to actually spin up a box, I would just go and select, say, this 2013 Professional Premium, hit the next button, give it a machine, tell it the size. Obviously, I wouldn't want to do that. I'd go extra small. But you can check here. You can go up to a single machine that's 8 cores at 56 gig of memory. I mean, that's a fairly chunky machine to be able to run VMs with. So yeah. Okay, I'm actually not going to spin that one up. So that's really just kind of the dashboard and how you work. Obviously, you can also go into your account as well to go and get your billing information, your utilization and so on. If I was to go, for example, into the storage account, I can then go and monitor what's actually happening with utilization. It gives me a lot of detailed information about what's happening on my network. I do suspect that this guy should be fairly flat, or I hope it's fairly flat, else I need to be paying money then. Okay, no, I haven't actually configured it yet. And I have no containers running here. But that's the portal itself. So, who here wants to build mobile apps? Kind of things for iOS, Android, Windows Phone, tablets, iPads. So, we actually provide this great service called Azure Mobile Services. Now, what Azure Mobile Services allows us to do is it allows us to really quickly create backends for mobile applications, as well as do things like a single push notification service across all platforms. Sorry, when I say all platforms, iOS, Android, Windows. Unfortunately, BlackBerry is not in that list. We also support things like kind of scheduled scripts, so you're able to run and process your backend data. It does all its kind of storage information, all those kinds of things, and it does that dynamically for you. So what it is it really consists of a bunch of stuff. So firstly, authentication. So this is authentication against things like Facebook, Gmail, your kind of Google account, your Windows Live account, and so on. It also provides us with data, so it actually has table storage. You can create tables and kind of connect and store, put data in and put it out. We also have a server logic mechanism. At this point in time, all of the server logic currently uses JavaScript as its base language. We're currently looking at adding C# as well. We also provide you with push notifications to clients. One of the great things about this push notification service is it's not just to Microsoft platforms. You can push notifications through to iOS and Android as well, just by sending, and you can talk to one platform. So when people register, it will come through the standard stuff, but you know you only have one user or credential that you're managing. We have a scheduler where you can schedule tasks at specific rates, which will go and then process and massage back-end data if need be. We have a whole bunch of login diagnostics for if anything's going wrong, so you can test it, and then you can scale this up very easily. The spaces where you would use this is really around kind of building your typical iOS, Android, Windows Phone, Windows 8 applications. You can literally put together an app in a couple of minutes with the back end of this service. It really is just about reducing your time to market at the end of the day. I mean, I know a lot of these mobile apps, a lot of people say, like, it takes 2-3 months to get out. This will reduce it quite considerably. And allows you to kind of build things rapidly. So I'm going to quickly jump into this and create a mobile service. And now we'll pray for the project to come back. Okay, so I'm just going to go to mobile services, which is this next one here. Yeah, and I'm going to create a new mobile service. So now what I'm going to do is this mobile service, I'm going to create as a free one. So these are free for usage. Unless you want to switch to something like SQL Server, it's MySQL. I'm going to go this should be deleted. Azure-mobile.net. I'm storing this in. I was busy checking whether I'm glad it's doing that, so let's change this to normal Europe. That will make my life a little bit easier. So it's going to make sure that that name's available. You can actually address this name directly. It does resolve. Great, so that worked. Okay, database settings. I don't have a server yet, do I? So I'll delay a bit. Create new database, SQL database server, login name. We'll use really silly credentials. Administrator. Let's go test user. My login password will be the usual strong password. It doesn't even like that. Use that one. There we go. Really simple password. Use North America, and I'm going to hit OK. And now what it's going to go do is it's going to go spin up this mobile service for me. It's going to go provision some data storage for me. It's going to create my database. It's going to go and set up the DNS, all that kind of stuff. This does take a couple of minutes. It's not instant, I wish it was, but obviously there's quite a bit of stuff happening in the background. Are there any questions while this gets set up? No. Okay. Okay, so while this is spinning up, one of the reasons why I really like Azure Mobile Services is really because it is free. If you guys want to go and build a little kind of play app, either using App Studio or you want to go build it out of C#, you want to go build an iOS app and you want to host stuff in the back end, you can actually quickly go jump in here, create your mobile service, and pop your own audio infra away. There we go. It's really, I think that was pretty quick. Okay, so what you see when you get your mobile service is there's a dashboard. This shows you basically utilization, what's going on in the background. This is where you will see whether you need to scale or not. You can automatically scale. I would say avoid that if you want to avoid getting these surprise builds of lots of moolah. But you can see here I've had no data calls because it's brand new. It tells you about all the active devices that are connecting to your service, how much data you're sending out. As you can see right now, I can connect to, with the free one, I can do 16,000 calls. I can do 500 devices and 330 meg of data going out. From a data point of view, if I want to go create tables now, I can go create a brand new table. I can create a new table now, template table. And then I can go and add the fields to it just like I would a normal relational database. Let me just click OK while that does its thing. The API is actually a way to expose functions to users as web services or RESTful services using JavaScript, so you can then go and do server logic and so on. This is the server logic that they were talking about. And it's very straightforward. You just create a new API item. you can create the actual objects that it passes back and forth in JavaScript, just like normal JavaScript classes, and it will get handled accordingly. The scheduler allows us to run these back-end timer jobs that will go viral from the massage data. The really nice ones here for me is push. So what you need to do to be able to get this to work, obviously you need to get your credentials. It tells you how to get them. It'll show you which service to go and get these credentials from. It tells you where you get the certificates for Apple as well as Google. So like I said, you can do push notifications to all those. But the nice thing, it gives you a single centralized mechanism of doing push notifications across these platforms. The same thing against identity. You'll see here they've got Microsoft account, they've got Facebook settings, they've got Twitter and Google. So those are the three different auths that you can use across these applications. Under configure, we have the ability to go and change our database, change the SQL server it's working on, change whether it's using a dynamic schema or not, and add some extra monitoring to the service itself. And then lastly is the scale button, which allows us to push our application size up very, very easily. Let's just wait for this one to load. Just so I can show you how easy it is to go out of what you're using. So here you'll see we've got free, standard, and premium. So under free, we can't really change anything. So if I switch to standard now, I can now go and take this up 6 units of utilization, the capacity, drop it down. I can set it to business, I can set the database sizes, I can go premium, and this lets me go even higher and take my capacity higher. I'm going to stay off with those guys because they can get quite costly quite quickly. But the free version should be pretty suitable for a very first draft of your app going out onto the marketplace. If you find that you're getting utilization which requires you to step out of free, you're probably starting to make money off your application, and ideally you should be figuring out monetization strategies. Be it adverts, in-app purchasing, or just selling an application for $1 or something like that. Okay, so that's part of it. Now if I go back to this home screen here, one of the other great features of it is that it allows us to quickly create applications. So if I want to go and create a new iOS app that automatically connects to all these features, I just go here and I go download, and it'll give you an Xcode 4 project with all the code and everything tied up, so it's including push notification services, all those kinds of features built in. If you already have an existing one, you can actually scroll up and say connect to an existing application, and it gives you a complete tutorial on how to connect your data to that backend service. So for me, this is sweet. It's very, very cool developer feature. And it's going to hopefully not start from crash at all. You just quickly skip ahead. And we're almost caught up. Okay. Are there any questions around mobile services? I'm pretty happy with that. Great. Okay, the next section I'm going to go into, this one here, is just talking a little bit about how the structured storage works. Like I said, it's a SQL database. If you're using SQL database apps, you can use a standard schema, and you can actually manage this data either through the portal, or you can use SQL Management Studio, or you can use the REST API, or any other client tools. The SQL scripts the service scripts are all using JavaScript. You can do all your CRUD operations and those kinds of things, as well as your being able to query your database and so on. On the server logic side of things, there's a whole bunch of supported modules, so you can actually connect to MS. If you use the MS SQL object inside your JavaScript, you can access the database. You can push stuff to the console. We have Node, there's a push notification, JavaScript experience as well. Tables, there's a bunch of status codes and so on, and yeah, there's a whole Node.js experience for developers. So it's trying to use skills that everybody has and giving them the ability to build an entire backend service. It's like taking a web developer and now giving them the ability to build a scalable backend and a mobile app. This is just an example of the JavaScript that you would use to go and execute a query. Standard Node.js on the success of the event. There are a couple of kind of REST API to SQL mapping differences that we have. So for example, if you're using any numeric values inside of JSON, that automatically goes to a SQL type of a float. And the reason for that is because we don't want any kind of casting issues happening from our data types. Boolean is a bit, datetime is a datetime offset 3, and string is an env max. So I don't know if anybody sees, like, if you're a database person, there are issues with this, in that you're automatically taking up large amounts of data for like unnecessary pieces of information. So the env max is taking up the max allocation for that instead of specifying the string size. So it's not necessarily optimal, but it does reduce your development time and your development pain. So how you set up push notifications, obviously you'll register all those channels and this. So but what will happen is app will come in, request to the channel URI. We will then register it with our cloud service and authenticate the push notification with our push notification service. That then goes and talks to Apple and Google to ensure that everything's okay there. And then it gives you the ability to kind of start doing the notification on the client platform side of things. So it does integrate to WNS and it provides kind of toast, tile, your badge and your raw notifications across the platforms. On Windows Phone and Windows 8 we have access to all of those. I'm not sure about iOS. I've only written one that does toast. I don't know if I'm sure it can do raw. But yeah, it allows us a really easy way to be able to push out notifications across multiple devices. Obviously on the free branch push notifications you are limited to the number of transactions on push. And I'll warn you now, when you start getting a big enough client base, that gets chewed up very quickly. But like I said, learn to monetize quickly. Okay, so from a pricing point of view, there's kind of different kind of models where you have shared mode where you're sharing one piece of hardware that's being hosted in the cloud. Your instances are small, you can get 10 free applications, unlimited inbound data. I think you're capped at 165 meg outbound. And if you want an SQL data, Microsoft SQL Server, you pay for that, else you can use MySQL as your backend. On the reserved mode, there you get a dedicated piece of server and so on. And there's a whole, okay, general availability is 99% uptime, which I think is pretty good. Okay, so from an example point of view, if you're running 10 mobile services on shared services and 100 meg database, and you've got less than 165 meg of data going out, that's $5 a month, which isn't bad. Obviously, if you were to compare this with local hosting costs and things like that, it's comparable. Sometimes local hosting comes in a little bit cheaper. It just depends on the pricing models that you've got there. Okay, so this is 10 free mobile services, and then it's just basically the 100 meg database at $5 a day. We have a really great pricing calculator for Windows Azure. It allows you to go and play with all the different pricing. I'll jump into that at a time, but if you have MSDN, we save you a lot of money. So if you've got MSDN, you can, for each guy, you can get $3,700 with your utilization a year. If you've got BizSpark, so the startup program that we have, it's also $3,500. Microsoft Partner Network guys already get $1,500 a year, and Website Spark gets $1,500 a year, free, so out of the box. So if you guys have those features, please use them. Else there's all this unutilized kind of free stuff, not getting. From Fire, yeah, you're a Fire BizSpark, but don't you have a BizSpark Plus? Okay, I think you might, depending on the arrangement you have with Gareth, you might have more utilization than that, I'm not sure. But yeah, so just in summary, I think Windows Mobile Services is pretty damn awesome. Go play with it. Yeah, not much else there. Okay, so platform as a service. So we talked about kind of rapid application development, and I think a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe these are just small apps. Okay.
I must go.
No problem.
It's very interesting.
Cool.
This mobile stuff.
Cool, man.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. So that's really rapid application development. Now, what happens if you want to start building kind of larger solutions, something like Outlook.com, Hotmail. We support a platform as a service offering, which allows us to build applications using like ASP.NET MVC or and worker roles and so on, and that we do using Visual Studio. And I'm just going to jump into a quick demo of what's available on Visual Studio. Anybody here building stuff on ASP.NET MVC? No. Okay. It's a very flexible website kind of framework. If you guys are building ASP.NET stuff and you're not using MVC, I'd recommend moving to MVC. It's a really, really great way of building apps. So what you'll see here is, I know Visual Studio, okay, this is 2013. I can go create a Windows Azure cloud service. I'm just going to hit OK here. And now it gives me an option of basically some features that I want to create. So for example, an ASP.NET web role, this is for like hosting websites and pushing it out to people. I can then go and create a WCF service to expose my data using either REST, standard WCF, TCP/IP, HTTP SOAP, and so on. And then I have these things called worker roles. Worker roles allow me to do back-end processing of queues that looks, as a message comes into the queue, it will then go off and do its thing in the background. And it kind of, they work very, very independently. So one of the things that we as developers need to change is the way that we kind of construct our applications into a more stateless, kind of like separation of concerns kind of concepts, to allow for like because we don't guarantee where your worker role will run unless you've got a specifically selected server structure. I mean, what could happen is a server could go, if a piece of hardware fails, we want to be able to migrate that process across very quickly. I'm just going to create this. Now, what I'm going to show you guys is kind of how you do deployments to the cloud. I'm going to create a standard web MVC one, and I'm going to automatically add unit tests. But what will happen is we'll go create my projects. I can now go and deploy this straight into Azure using my publishing settings. I've fortunately enough gone and downloaded my publishing settings before, but there's a little button that says give me my publishing settings. It signs you into the site, downloads a file, and you just import it directly. Unfortunately, it's not longer than I expected. But yeah, so once this is all up and running, you can now go build your ASP.NET MVC website as you would do normal. You would add your worker roles using standard kind of functionality, or you would expose your service using WCF as you would do normal. So if I go into this code, let's create my test quickly. Does anybody here do test-driven development? No. Okay, so test-driven development, something to look at. Write your tests first, then you build the code. It's a great technique of ensuring your applications all get tested to its end. So here you'll see I've got my WCF role. For those of you who have used it before, here's my backend code for my service. Yep, here we go. Here's my backend. So switched out. Backend code for my service. I can then go and manipulate this. I can then go and change my interface as well and create all my own services and exposed functionality. If I scroll down, here's my web role. Here you will see a standard MVC kind of website with your controllers and your view models, your views and your models, and you can go and look at that as well. Once again, giving you the power to go and do the URL redirection and routing and so on. Very, very flexible. And then lastly, we've got our kind of our web worker roles and so on. Where is our web worker role? I think I created web role WCF. I created 2 WCF roles instead of 1 worker role. But yeah, you get the idea. It's very, very simple. But now for me to publish this to Azure, which is really nice, I just right click on this guy here, go publish. You'll see here I've already got my stuff configured. I can now go and go configured. I can actually now from here specify I want to create a brand new cloud service for it. It'll then go spawn all that up and register it. I haven't got any configured at the moment, so I can go create new, and it'll go specify the region and so on, and spin it up and deploy it. Now, this is the platform as a service kind of offering, and we can now go host this in the cloud and so on. One of the other things a lot of people don't realize is that with Windows Azure, you can actually scale up your development environment, your testing environment very, very quickly. So what I can do is I can actually go and using Lab Manager, TFS and so on, I can actually go spin up virtual machines that are in the cloud and deploy my content to the cloud and run all my automated either UI tests or background or unit tests and actually execute them in the cloud. And you'll only use the stuff that you need instead of having to go and provision an entire dev environment, entire testing environment. So it does reduce your costs locally on where you are. Okay, so that's just a quick run through for the platform as a service stuff. So the scenarios that we provide for, here we go. It's a bit of latency there. But it really allows us to kind of it allows us for applications that need scalability, availability, high fault tolerance, and so on. Mainly used for websites and things. I really enjoy the compute-intensive app stuff. So you can do scientific computing. It's no big blue or the large supercomputing clusters, but you can do very, very high performance computing here. For device applications, for anything like running on iOS, Android, Windows 5, Windows 8, allows you to create web APIs that you can expose to other people. So if you're consuming data and you think it will have value for other people, you can expose it to other people. And for social games, that's a big one. I'm a huge gamer, so I play a lot of games, and a lot of them use the Azure backend. There's a game called something Galactic Rain, which actually renders videos online, ships it back to your phone of a battle, and then you can actually watch the battle in a video. It's pretty cool. So getting started, there's a 3-month trial available online for those of you who want to go play with it. I think you guys have some tokens as well, which gives you access to pretty much everything. If you have MSDN, use MSDN. All else fails, drop me a mail. I'll put my email address up on the board just now. You can talk about things and see how we can help out. So these are the different kind of MSDN benefits across the different tiers. So if you've got Ultimate, you've got a whole bunch of facilities there. If you've got Premium, it's a little bit less, and Professional is a little bit less. So yes, Windows Azure is flexible, good, solid, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's a sales pitchy slide. I don't know why I put it there. Yeah, so in summary, it's a really great set of features. Just start now, go to windowsazure.com, and it's very straightforward. If you guys get stuck technically, if you get stuck technically, what I did do is I put my Twitter account on there. I'm at DaveMSWSA if you want to get hold of me. I do follow it 24 hours a day pretty much. Yeah, I'm a geek, I don't sleep. Code. And my snail mail is, yeah, trust me, when you have 43,000 emails in 6 months, this is snail mail. It's made font bit bigger so it can get picked up by the camera.
So you're more proactive on Twitter than your email?
Yeah. I'm not joking. I respond to things like Twitter, Facebook, that kind of stuff a lot quicker because it's direct interaction. Whereas email, because of the types of emails that you get, like it's a filtering process. It's like important, important, not important, not important, not important. Like can be left till next year. So you just leave it unread until next year. But yeah, so you can get hold of me on that email address. I will pretty much read my mail twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. And I will get back to you as soon as possible. If you guys want more information about this, we do have an event coming up at TechDays.co.za. It's the 31st of October. It's a full-day developer conference on app development, Azure, IT Pro stuff, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to check it out, please come and join us. And yeah, that's Azure. Any questions? Happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Nick. If you have anything, just drop me a line. Cool. Thanks very much, guys. I'll leave that up there for a second.